Hello, everyone. I'm Jackie Montero Sharp. I'm the Director of Admissions here at Fort Union Military Academy. And today we have Miss Houston, who is the mother of a current cadet. Miss Houston, do you mind telling us about your son, what grade he's in, where y'all are from, and how you first heard about Fort Union?
Sure. So my son is in the ninth grade. He also did attend for eighth grade. We are from Detroit, Michigan, by way of other places, but that's where he left to go to school from. And I heard about Fort Union from a friend actually, whose child never attended, but she had heard about it from a different friend. So I was speaking to her about some choices that I was looking to make, and she said, "I heard about this school. I'll get the information and send it to you." And it was just history from there.
Perfect. So he came in eighth grade, which is quite young. He was probably about 13 or 12 when he arrived.
Yes.
What were some of your thoughts sending him to a boarding school? I know the whole concept of boarding school can be a little bit out there for some parents. And you obviously from Michigan to Virginia is a long way from home. So
Yeah.
what kind of was your thought process behind that?
Terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified, but I knew that I needed to do something different for my son at that time. It was after the pandemic, well, the hard parts of it, I guess you could say. And he was just not doing well with virtual at all. The district we were in didn't offer, hybrid or anything of that nature. And so I said, I have to do something to help this young man before we reach the point of no return. Um, I heard about the school and I talked to Selah about, am I allowed to say his name?
Yes.
Okay. I talked to Selah about it, and we decided to come visit. Came to an open house, and the open house was not in Fort Union. It was a city outside of in Virginia, though. So just he and I decided to come and see what the open house was about. While we were there, I cannot remember his name. Gray hair, taller guy.
Colonel Billingsley.
Yep, there was Billings. We met with him and he said, well, part of the admissions process is to have a visit to the school. And we had an extra day where we weren't doing anything. He said, you may want to try. Called the school, set up the appointment for the visit to this campus. And we drove up from Richmond. Well, no, we were outside of Richmond, but close by. And we drove up, and when we got in the car afterwards, he said, I feel better about this. And I said, me too. So, yeah, the combination of the open house and then actually seeing the campus in person for ourselves helped seal the deal for us.
Awesome. I always encourage prospective families to come visit. I know sometimes it's super far away from home, but that's really the best way to see if we are what y'all are looking for.
Yeah.
Tell me, I'm sure Selah was a little homesick at first. Can you talk to me about like his first maybe few months here? Because it's also a huge adjustment, homesickness, a whole new group of friends, a whole new group of teachers, living on your own for the first time. So can you tell me a little bit about his first few months?
Yes. So, the first couple of weeks where we're not allowed to talk to them,
Mhm.
I was panicking, but he did not seem to, mind it at all. When I finally was able to talk to him, he was upbeat. He had nothing but positive things to say. And I'm listening on the phone, like, is this the same young man? Like, he's happy to be away from me. But it wasn't that. I think it was just the whole boys thing. Like, he could be a boy's boy. He was outside. He was doing whatever he wanted to do within reason, right? And so I think he really enjoyed that autonomy for the first time in his life, which eighth grade is very early to give it to them, but it worked for us. And I can say after the first year when he came home, for the summer, I said, son, did you never want to call and ask me to pick you up? He said, I wanted to call all the time. And I said, well, why didn't you? He said, because I know you would have made me go back to finish. I was like, you are absolutely correct. So him knowing that he wouldn't have been able just to come home in the middle of something, because that's one of our models as a family, is once you start, you finish. If you don't like it, you don't have to try it again. But that was one of the things that he expressed to me, was like he was homesick. But I think having really good friends and just being able to do things that he enjoyed was helpful.
Right, absolutely. Um, we are a military academy, which also unfortunately can carry a lot of negative stereotypes. Were you specifically looking for a military academy, or like how did you come to the conclusion that maybe a military environment was best for Selah?
Well, he wants to be in the armed services later in life.
Perfect. Yeah.
He may or may not, but I
Mhm.
think that's part of what attracted him to accepting, like, okay, this is happening. When we arrived to drop him off for his drop off date,
Mhm.
it was like it was a well-oiled machine. Like the young men were moving, everybody had on their uniforms. It was so clean and just precise. And so I think part of that for him was like, I might be okay here, you know? So we had no problem with that at all.
Okay, good. I'm really glad to hear that. We put a lot of planning into those check-in days.
You can tell. It is
Thank
evident. Yes.
Tell me about, I'm sure you've spoken with many adults on campus. So, because I kind of like hand off the baton, or my office does, to the other folks once a boy officially enrolls to the academy. Have
Mhm.
there been any adults that have stood out, or that were able to talk to when you were missing Sailor, he was missing you?
I could think of three specifically, and you have to excuse me if I don't get the names, but Sergeant Acker,
Yes,
amazing.
amazing.
Sayla, I loved him.
I love him
He
too.
thought he was hilarious, but also stern. You know, he had that good balance with the
Mhm.
boys. When we did our admissions tour, it was, what is his name? I can't think of his name, but he did our tour for us. Um, he's married. They had a baby recently.
I had a
Yeah,
baby recently.
yeah, like within the last year or so. Um, Gosh, I wish I could remember. I don't remember his name, but he did our tour, and so it was nice because he interviewed us separately. I know it's part of the process, but it just felt so
Yeah.
serious, right? And then when we walked in, Selah's name was on the thing, like "Welcome to Fork Union, Selah," and it was just the campus tour. So we just felt really welcomed in that home. Barnett, that was his name.
Yes. Okay.
It just felt really, really great. He walked us around, answered any questions. Selah had really good questions. And so he was great. And then Colonel Bodine. Colonel Bodine, Selah really has taken to him. He like talks to him about everything. I'm like, well, that's good. Talk to Colonel Bodine. But certain things about that experience is the reason I wanted him to go, so that he can talk to men and other people who have lived a life, and they can say, like, listen, sir, I know you're a kiddo, but there's still certain man things you have to learn along the way. And so he's just eating it up.
Was him going to an all-boys school important to you?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No. I had looked at some places here in Michigan as well, but they didn't fit the way I thought he would fit here.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever come to like a parents' weekend, or have you come up to Virginia since he's been to visit him?
Oh,
Any?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, we did the parents parade. We did I say we, sometimes my other children come with me.
Yeah.
We did it was like the first parade they have like after they come back for the summer. So I've come to that one, but yeah, I come often. Uh,
Okay. Good.
mhm.
So have you met any of his friends or other parents?
Yeah, yeah. Along the way, he picks up people. He's like his mother. We just collect folks along the way. But yeah, he has introduced friends, and I've talked to other parents. In August, was it August when we came? I was talking to other parents. No, it wasn't August. It was the first leave that they could leave on. I think that was in October. Um, and some of the parents were just standing there crying. I'm like, what's wrong? Like other moms, they're like, I can't believe this is the same kid. And I'm like, I know. It happens really fast from that August to October date. It's like day and night. You get a new kid back.
I don't have any children, but I think it's part of those tears. I believe sometimes are you kind of leave a little boy and you get back a man.
Mhm.
They're still growing up, but you kind of leave a little boy, and when you come back the beginning of summer, you kind of get a little ban. And
Yeah,
that's a big change.
it is. And my son even emailed me one time when they were allowed to have access that first year, and he said something to the effect of, "I really appreciate what you did, and I can see why you did it now." I was like, okay,
Wow.
that's it. I'm saying, because as parents, you also have doubts like, is this the right thing? Will my child be acclimating well? Different things like that. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
What were some of the biggest changes you saw in him?
Well, mannerisms for sure. I don't have to tell him things more than once. He may not move immediately, but I still don't have to come back and remind him. He'll do it. When he's home, he's washing dishes without being asked. He just kind of takes the initiative more than before he went. He also was like, if I say something to one of his siblings and they don't do it, he's like behind me reinforcing. I'm like, okay, that's great. And in public, I've noticed, because he's really like a quiet kind of kid until you get to know him. But in public, if someone's like, thank you, he's like, you're welcome, ma'am. And my daughter's like, ma'am, like she's who is this kid that we got back? Also, like when he flew home and he had to wear his 4th Union blazer and his khakis and everything like that. Listen, the attention that outfit gets, people really are like, oh my gosh, look, how are you, young man? And he's just looking like, hey, kind of shy. But so I noticed it helped him come out of his shell some. But
Good.
it also just gave him like that off to be able to deal with other people outside of his family more.
Right.
Yeah.
What about his academics? We are eighth graders are in the one subject plan. Of course, he's been on
Mhm.
it this year. Do you think he has improved in that regard?
Yes, I do. That's one of the things he loves about it, because he can focus on one thing at a time. And so when I talked to him recently about his grades and things, because I check in with that often, he said, I feel like I learned how to study better. He said he learned how to study better, and he understands how he needs to do his work. So before, I think it was just like, I'm saying, hey, do your work, study, but it hadn't clicked in for him what works for him and how he needed to study. So yeah.
Good. And has he told you about any activities he's involved in besides schoolwork, of course?
Yeah, schoolwork, of course, right? That's not an option.
Fun.
He has done soccer. He's currently wrestling, which he loves, and he's never wrestled before. And
Yeah.
he's he went to regionals and state. And so I'm like, oh my gosh.
I
Um,
do think some folks are intimidated when their sons come and maybe they're not the most athletic or they're still, eighth grade, ninth grade, haven't really dove deep into a sport yet, but it is a good place to try new
Try
things.
it out. Yeah, try it out. He's done scuba diving there. He's actually enrolled for their like advanced open water
Yeah.
course that's coming up in the spring. And then he wanted to do the thing where they like go out in nature. I can't remember what it was called, but you have to find your way back.
Orienteering.
Yes. He's so excited about that.
Well, good. And those are things I'm assuming he might not have been able to do at home.
No, no. Well, Michigan, why are we scuba diving? No reason to scuba dive in Michigan. Still
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
But yeah, and those are things that he loves outside. He always has, nature. He's very trivia oriented when he knows a lot of things about outside and how to survive. So he's building his toolbox, for life.
Absolutely. If you met another prospective mom, she's thinking about Fork Union, what pieces of advice or just in general, what would you tell her? Because it definitely is, huge decision, especially if your son is going to be a boarding student. You really have to trust the process and of course trust all the adults here at the academy. We are here for your son's best interests, and that can be parenting is hard. And now we would be co-parenting together.
Yeah.
So what would you tell prospective moms, dads, families?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say talk to other parents, like during the drop off,
Yeah.
during the parades and things, because you're not the only one that feels like that. We all in some way felt like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Especially if you're further away. Like I'm really far away from my child.
Yeah.
Uh, but also trusting in the things that you have already instilled in them before you ever drop them off, right? If you know that you've taught them to be mannerable and respectful and things of that nature, it's just going to show up when your child is somewhere without you.
Perfect. Excellent advice. Anything else you would like to share about the academy or just in
Um,
general about Selah or his experience?
Yeah, no, it's definitely an impressive place. Um, to see the young men in their uniforms. I am a water bag, so anytime those young men line up and everything, I'm just like, hold it together, hold it together. Because it's so amazing to see they're
Yes.
so young, and that they're able to like do the parades and the marching and all that in sync. It is wonderful. As far as my child goes, I'm just so grateful that he's been able to have this type of opportunity. That he trusted me with it. He didn't get there and mess up and rebel. He kind of just went with it and was easygoing. And he did make friends. I think one of the biggest things he took away and that he talks about is the different types of friends he has that he would have never got to meet from different countries, states. He's really into, he's trying to learn other people's languages just from his friends. I'm like, well, that's not how it goes. But yeah, I really, 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 I would not have changed this decision at all ever. I would make the same decision again if I went back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do think part of being a military academy is that pageantry, like that you're talking about, like seeing the boys in the uniform and watching them do drill. That's something that in today's society we don't really get to see anymore or really get to experience anymore. So it is, I always also get a little emotional when they do drill, especially when they're in their Class A uniform. Ugh,
Oh,
it is- you see all the ribbons they've earned and their
yeah.
cords. Yeah, it is very
And
special.
you know what else? He dresses more neatly now too. He kind of puts himself together better. He knows that uniform inside and out. So like when he does come home and he has to go back, he's like, no, I have to wear this back. And he is shirt tucked in, everything. I'm like, oh my God. But before, no, ma'am.
Well, good. Well, thanks so much for talking with me today. I'm going to end the recording.
Okay.